Everyone, my name is Kate Pendon. Our subject today is purposive communication. I will be reporting the second part of the topic, the models of communication. The models of communication are conceptual models used to explain the human communication process. The models of communication that are discussed in this topic are Aristotle's model of communication, Shannon Weaver's model of communication, Osgood's Graham model of communication, White's stages of oral communication. Before I start, let us have a quick review of the first half, which was discussed by Miss Boliser. Aristotle's model of communication. The Aristotle's model of communication revolves around the speaker as the main concept in communication and is the only one who holds the responsibility to influence his or her audience through public speaking. Speakers adjust their message according to their audience and the occasion to achieve a particular effect. It is the speaker's role to deliver speech to the audience. This makes the communication process one way, from speaker to the receiver. Aristotle's model can be divided into five primary elements, which are speaker, speech, occasion, audience, and effect. Shannon Weaver's model of communication. This model provides a framework for analyzing how messages are sent and received. It is best known for the ability to explain how messages can be mixed up and misinterpreted in the process between sending and receiving. The 7 key concepts of Shannon and Weaver's model of communication are sender, encoder, channel, noise, decoder, receiver, and feedback. Originally, the concept feedback was not proposed by Shannon and Weaver in 1948. Norbert Wiener came up with the step feedback in response to the criticism of the linear nature of the model, thus making the model from a linear to a cyclical model. Let us proceed to the second half of the topic, Osgood and Scrum model of communication. In this model, pay attention to the role of the interpreter. Encoding and decoding are not automatic processes. Both go through the filter of interpreter. Therefore, the message may succeed or fail based on the interpreter's appreciation of the message. There are times when the sender and receiver may apply different meaning to some message, and this is termed semantic noise. Semantic noise is a concept introduced here. It occurs when sender and receiver apply different meaning to the same message. It happens mostly because of technical language. Some words and phrases may cause you to deviate from the actual meaning of the message. The Osgood Scrum model is built on the theory that communication is a two-way street with a sender and a receiver. Charles Egerton Osgood popularized the notion that communication was circular rather than linear, meaning that it requires two participants taking turns sending and receiving a message. Communication happens within ourselves or two people. Each person acts as both sender and receiver, and hence use interpretation. Encoding, interpret, and decoding simultaneously take place in this model. This model also showcases that the fact that we are active communicators and we are active in interpreting the message we receive. Component of Osgood Scrum model: encoder, decoder, interpreter, and message. Encoder, the one who does the encoding or sends the message. Decoder, the one who received the message. Interpreter is the person trying to understand or analyze the message. Okay, then the message is the concept shared between both parties. Advantage of Osgood Scrum model of communication. Dynamic model shows how a situation can be changed. It shows why redundancy is an essential part. There is no separate sender and receiver. Sender and receiver is the same person. Assume communication can be circular in nature. Feedback, the central feature. It provides a straightforward approach to communicating, with sender and receiver trading roles back and forth in circular pattern. This allows both parties to contribute equally and share their feedback, which act as a confirmation that the message has been received and decoded. Disadvantage of Osgood-Scrum model of communication. This model does not talk about semantic noise, and it assumes the moment of encoding and decoding. When semantic noise takes place, decoding and interpretation becomes difficult and people get deviated from the actual message. White's stages of oral communication. According to White, it is possible to begin at any of the stages outlined in his model. People are under the mistaken impression that when we communicate, we usually start with thinking, but that is not necessarily the case. Since it is circular, it means that the oral communication is a continuous process with no real beginning or ending. The most important contribution of Eugene White is the concept of feedback, which was only be processed by the speaker if he or she has been monitoring the audience or the listener. Hence, the speaker must also pay attention to the listener's verbal and nonverbal cues. Eugene White's definition of the model of communication is that it is a repetitive cycle. His 1960 model is that of a cyclical process composed of 8 stages. These stages are thinking, symbolizing, expressing, transmitting, receiving, decoding, feedbacking, and monitoring. White's 8 oral stages of communication. Thinking, a desire, feeling, or an emotion provides the communicator a stimulus to communicate. Symbolizing, before a communicator can utter sound, he or she has to know the code of oral language which represent his or her ideas, and in order to make his or her selection. Expressing, the communicator then used his or her voice to produce the sound of language, accompanied by his facial expression, gestures, and body stance. Transmitting, the sound waves spread at 1,000 feet per second, and light waves travel at a speed of 186,000 miles per second. Carry the speaker's message to the listener. Receiving, when the sound waves make an impact upon the listener's ear, after which the resulting nerve impulse reach the brain via the auditory nerve. Decoding, the communicator interprets the language symbols he or she receives and thinks further. Feedback, the communicator may show overt behavior like a nod, yawn, or a smile, or he or she may not show any behavior at all. Monitoring, while the communicator watches for sign or an understanding of his or her message among his or her listener. The communicator is receiving and decoding messages about himself or herself from his or her audience in order to adjust to the particular situation. The concept of feedback in communication. Feedback in communication refers to the response or reaction of the receiver of the message. In Eugene White's model of communication, feedback comes after decoding the message. It is critical, therefore, for the message to be decoded or understood correctly for the proper reaction to be elicited. This model suggests that there is no beginning or end to communication. Eugene White is also the one who introduced the concept of feedback, a process that is now known to close the loop or complete the cycle. That's all. Thank you.